Assassin's Creed is a franchise that used to define its genre. This can be a little hard to remember, but there was once a time when Assassin's Creed was a revolutionary, game-changing franchise that brought a lot of brand new ideas to the table. Open-world games taking place in vibrant and exciting historical locations while following interesting characters through compelling stories. Didn't last long. I figure this era of Assassin's Creed lasted maybe about 6 years from when the first game came out until about Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And then they came out with Rogue and Unity and Syndicate, and these were games that at first were not that well received, but have since been sort of appreciated more and more as time has gone on. And it's interesting because for me, at least, things actually started to pick back up again when Origins and Odyssey came out. I know a lot of people dislike those games and they're too much and they're too Ubisoft and all that. I get all that, but I actually really like both of those games. But I think when Valhalla was released, everybody really started to get tired of this franchise once again, myself included. So when Ubisoft announced that they were working on a new Assassin's Creed game that would recall the older games in the franchise, a game that would once again make us feel like proper assassins, like many others, I was immediately interested. But now that the game's been released, I'm afraid to say that my time playing it was simply disappointing. I was hoping that this game would end up being the best of both worlds, between the RPG style of the newer Assassin's Creed games and the more, not necessarily linear, but more action-adventure style games that we had with Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, all of those. I think the unfortunate reality is they actually brought together the worst of both of those worlds, and I just wanted to take some time to talk about that today. First up, I want to talk about the graphics. And this is a pretty simple, almost like rudimentary complaint, but I think it's really important to point this out. Assassin's Creed has looked basically the exact same since Unity. And it was downright impressive how good Unity looked when it came out back in 2014. But now that we're in 2023, this series is just beginning to look outdated. I think the environments, for the most part, still look passable. They're not excellent by any means. They're a little cookie cutter, but they get the job done as far as I'm concerned. But Jesus Christ, the characters and the facial animations and stuff that they have in this game are just, they look horrible. For 2023, there is absolutely no shot this is how a game should look. For facial animations and character design, like, it's just brutal. And it really takes you out of the story. These are story-based games. They have a lot of heavy storytelling elements, and then you've got character animations that look like this. And I'm sorry, it just doesn't cut it, especially coming from a studio like Ubisoft that should have the resources they need to improve this type of thing. And on the topic of animation, I just wanted to point something out that I noticed when I was playing through. What's up with the camels, man? Do camels really look like that when they run? Like, I don't think so. I really don't think that's how. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm not a camel expert, but Jesus, it looks stupid. And just from a general perspective, I think that there's something kind of off about the way that Assassin's Creed games look graphically. They don't really hit the ultra realism style of graphics like games like Cyberpunk 2077 or Uncharted 4 hit. But they also don't have a stylized look like a game like Elden Ring or the new Zelda games like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. It just falls in this weird middle ground where it doesn't really seem like they know how they want this game to look. And I think the result is that it's just really boring. It has that Ubisoft just meh to it that I really just don't really like. And this is how all of their games look. I think Far Cry has this same issue. Watch Dogs, they all kind of just look like fake, and they're not, I don't know, there's just something really cookie cutter about the way the games look, and Assassin's Creed is absolutely no exception to that. And really, Ubisoft is starting to remind me of Bethesda in the way that they just release games using the same crappy technology over and over again that feel virtually the same as the game that came before it, and they just try to squeeze as much juice as they can out of the game engines that they develop. And Assassin's Creed Mirage is just the farthest thing from being an exception to this. It's so cookie cutter, it's so bland and boring. There is something really strange going on with the voice acting in this game. It feels really cheap and it's like downright amateurish at certain points. And this to me was a bit of a surprise coming from Ubisoft, and this is a company that to me at least usually gets this kind of thing right. They really missed the mark with Mirage though. The voice acting is just, frankly, I just thought it was bad. I'm just going to be honest. It doesn't feel becoming of a AAA game with a name like Assassin's Creed to have voice acting that feels as awkward and out of place as this.
The little finch returns to the nest. Empty-handed?
It just leaves me thinking, like, why the hell did he say that? What's going on? None of this makes any sense to me. I don't know. Didn't like it at all, and I really think they should have done a lot better. And I hope that this doesn't become a trend with Assassin's Creed, because as I was saying with the facial animations, storytelling is way too important to the core of this franchise for this sort of thing to be suffering the way that it did in Mirage. Another place where I feel like they really dropped the ball was with the combat system and the way they developed that for this game. Like many things in this game, it really feels like they were trying to find a middle ground between old school Assassin's Creed and new school Assassin's Creed. And they definitely found that middle ground to a degree, except it just doesn't feel good at all. And I think there's a few reasons for this, but the most important of them by far is the lack of fluidity. It just feels like this game has a grand total of 3 different kill animations, and none of them are all that interesting. And if we take a look back at Assassin's Creed Brotherhood that came out, all the way back in 2009, 2010, look at how much more interesting this combat system looks. Just killing people left, right, and center in a million different ways. It's Assassin's Creed. You're an assassin. It should feel rewarding and fluid, and you should feel like a badass when you're just mowing through enemies, you know? And this game, it's just janky, and it's clunky, and the animations are awful, and we're gonna talk about that more as we go on, because the animations are a serious problem with this game. Like, I'm glad the Hidden Blade is back. I think it's great. It feels great to use that in a video game again. But I'm not a big fan of how it's implemented, and I just think it's a perfect example of the animation issues in this game. There are only a small handful of different animations for assassinations in this game, and they get old really quickly. But on top of that, there's often this like irritating delay that happens when you try to trigger an assassination. Like, you'll jump down and you'll press to assassinate, and then there's this awkward moment where you're just kind of looking at the guy, or you're standing behind him, and then you do it. And in my mind, that's just completely unacceptable. When you're talking about assassinating somebody, especially in like a stealth scenario, it has to be fluid. It has to feel like instant. And it did. If you go back and play Brotherhood, I was playing Unity not that long ago. It feels fluid. You're boom, boom, boom. Everything's just happening. Doesn't happen in Mirage. It feels like shit. And I have absolutely no idea how they managed this, given that games that are a decade or more older than it feel completely fine in this way. And as I was saying, the same can be said for basically everything combat related. All of the animations are janky and delayed, and they don't feel fluid or good at all, and it really just ruins the combat system in Mirage. And as I've been saying, you can really tell where they've made changes to try to make this game feel like old school Assassin's Creed. And while in some cases I can appreciate the changes they've made, for the most part, it feels like this game is taking a step in the wrong direction. As a perfect example, I think the eavesdropping system was not something that needed to return. I thought the eavesdropping system was annoying as hell in the first Assassin's Creed game, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I think that that was actually a pretty major complaint with that game, and it made it feel very repetitive. And for some reason, they looked at that feature from a game that came out 16 years ago, and they're like, hey, let's drag that back into the fray. I don't understand that. Now, it's not as oppressive or repetitive as it is in Assassin's Creed 1, at least not in the time that I played this game, because, by the way, I could not bring myself to finish this game. But it still isn't fun, and I don't know why they brought it back, and it's just a good example of them not really understanding what made old school Assassin's Creed as fun as it was. Another problem that I can think of with stuff they brought back from older games, or stuff that they sort of reinvented, in this case for older games, was the way the notoriety system works. Just to be upfront, I hate the notoriety system in every Assassin's Creed game. I think it's boring. I think it just adds tedium to the game that doesn't need to be there, and this is no exception. This was a pain in the ass in Odyssey for me. In Odyssey, where you kill people and then you get a bounty hunter chasing you around that's like way overpowered. But in that game, you could easily just pay off the bounty in the menu, and it wasn't expensive, and if you just didn't want to deal with it, you could just keep paying it off. And if you did want to deal with it, there was this cool progression system where you would see all these different bounty hunters in a lineup in the menu, and it felt like you were kind of working your way through the food chain of mercenaries. And I thought that was kind of cool, even though the system was a little bit tedious. But in Mirage, on the other hand, All of this goes out the window for a much more rudimentary system. For starters, you gain notoriety very quickly. You can basically be guaranteed that you're always going to be playing at full notoriety, even if you take the action to reduce it, because as soon as you reduce it, you're just going to end up getting it back right away. And on top of this, the guys that get sent to kill you are just nameless randoms that give absolutely no sense of weight or occasion when they show up. They just kind of show up as a random enemy and they're harder to kill, but that's it. And to make matters even worse, you can't just simply pay off your bounty like you could in Odyssey. You either need to go around ripping down wanted posters like you did in the older Assassin's Creed games, or you need to go pay off a guy that you have to go to in person and give him some sort of token that you can find, and I could never really figure out how that worked, but it's a much more difficult process, and it, again, just adds tedium to this game where it doesn't need to have it. And again, like, I get that they were trying to recall the systems from older Assassin's Creed games in this way, but just like with the eavesdropping system, I think this was some stuff that was just better left in the past. And speaking of things that should have been left behind, let's talk about Eagle Vision for a second. So Eagle Vision has been a staple of Assassin's Creed from the very beginning. You've always had this mode that you go into and you could see everything from a different perspective or whatever. And at times it can feel like a bit of a gimmick, but this is a classic part of the franchise, so I'm not surprised or disappointed to see it in Mirage. It's used a bit more in this game than it has been in games past, and you need to use it to like solve puzzles in this game pretty frequently. But like I said, this part of Eagle Vision is fine. I'm not gonna complain about it. But where it is not fine is the second aspect of Eagle Vision. What I'm getting at is that the system where you fly the fucking eagle around, get rid of it. Just get rid of it. I'm tired of it. This needs to stop. Okay, the only purpose that this eagle serves is to reinforce the Ubisoft formula of like clearing out enemy camps and scanning for enemies and marking them all and finding collectibles and all that crap. That's all this thing does. Get rid of it, man. I'm telling you. And then there's this stupid ass mini game where you gotta like zoom in on like a circle that's closing down. What the fuck is this? Why? Bruh. Oh. Blech. Whoever came up with this idea, like, I just want to know what the thought process was. Like, what, you know, you're... Okay, I need to... This system hasn't been fun since it was introduced. And I haven't liked it, okay? I get that there's a setting where you can kind of turn it off, where you don't need to do this stupid-ass minigame as often, but it's part of the game, and I don't like turning off parts of the game, so I'm just gonna do what the game gives me. The bottom line for me, though, is that this wasn't fun when it was introduced, and they've actually made it worse in Mirage. So they've added this marksman component where you'd be trying to, like, find some crap for a mission, and then some dude with a bow and arrow is gonna start shooting at your bird. And this is just ludicrously annoying, and it's just another aspect of that Ubisoft formula where you have to go into the camp and kill a specific guy and then do this and then do that, and I hate it. Bottom line is, this crap needs to go. It's a goofy mechanic, it sucks balls, and if you disagree with me, you know what I'm saying, dog? Get out of here. And I wanted to take a quick second to touch on the parkour system that this game offers, because I really thought that it would be better than what we ended up getting. Parkour took a huge hit when Assassin's Creed moved to the open world format that it's now known for. Climbing up rock faces and running around small villages just doesn't hit the same way as running around Paris or Rome the way that you used to in older Assassin's Creed games. And with Mirage, I think many of us really expected that aspect of the game to feel better. I think we expected that it would feel more in line with old school Assassin's Creed games, especially the rise of popularity in the past few years of Assassin's Creed Unity and the way that the free running works in that game. People have really started to appreciate that, and I'm disappointed to say that Ubisoft didn't take anything from those games and put them in this one. There's absolutely nothing even almost comparable between the two. Unity is on a different universe parkour wise, and I'll talk about why that is. The big difference maker, as with many things in this game, is the fact that the animations just are not up to par. They needed to be faster and smoother in every aspect, and the parkour system is just another place where this game loses a lot of ground because of the lack of quality here. They just kind of took the system that was in Odyssey and Valhalla and Origins, and they just ported it directly into this game. And I guess they figured because it was a more urban kind of environment, I guess they just thought that it would be fine to do that. But the fact is that it just needed to be better. It needed to be smoother if they wanted it to compare to a game like Assassin's Creed Unity. If you compare the free running in this game to Unity directly, you can clearly see the difference in how smooth the animations are and how fluid everything feels, specifically when you're quickly transitioning between different animations. As we've already touched on, this is an issue that plagues this game front to back. Animation problems are an issue from the dialogue and the way that the game tells its story. There's an issue there. Combat, assassination, stealth, problems there. And now free running and parkour also has animation issues. This entire game, that's the whole game right there. And every aspect of it is touched in some way by the animation issues, and it's extremely disappointing. But that's pretty much all I have to say about Mirage. I know I'm a little bit late to the party on this. Just been taking a little bit of a breather. But I just really wanted to talk about this because Assassin's Creed is a franchise that I've been playing since the very beginning. I'm pretty passionate about it. I really enjoyed a lot of Assassin's Creed games, and I was hoping that this one would scratch that itch of like the old school feeling games, but it really didn't. But I do really think that there's a lot of potential for great Assassin's Creed games down the line. I know they have, what is it called? Assassin's Creed Codename Red. And it sounds like it should be more up my alley. Like I said, I really enjoy Origins and Odyssey. I think those are both really good games, even if they do have a few flaws. And that game, Codename Red, is going to be a lot more like that, set in feudal Japan. And I think that sounds pretty interesting, so I'm definitely here for that. And I'm also here for anything else they come out with. I know a lot of people are tired of it, and they're bored of Assassin's Creed, and they hate Ubisoft, and I get all that. But I can't help but get excited when they announce new games, and I was excited for this, but it was disappointing, unfortunately. And I don't really have any desire to play it, to be honest. So for now, probably going to go back and play a few older Assassin's Creed games. Maybe I'll make a video on Unity or Syndicate or something. So stay tuned for that. Hit subscribe, hit comment, hit like, smash it like a motherfucker. I'm coming at you with some more videos this month, next month, and the month after that, and all the months farther down the line. We're back, baby. Let's go. See you later. God bless. Peace.